special edition of the Lance Wallnau Show. And I have with me Mercedes Sparks over here. Would you please say hi to Mercedes?
Hello.
Why is this such a happy time of year for you? I'm starting off my show today with this focus on people that are taking territory. I'm excited because I work with people that are actually succeeding. But you're successful, Mercedes. And what is it about this material today you want people to get?
Well, today we're talking about a really special topic, and I like it because it's a really well balance of some of the most exceptional things that you teach, Lance. It's 7M, so the concept of these different 7 mind molders, spheres, mountains, as you like to call them, and how they impact and shape culture. And then we also take a look at you as an individual. How do you start becoming the person who God's called you to be so that you can step into this cultural landscape battle that we're in? So this, I think, is a brand new product, a teaching that you're going to offer on today's show. So what is that, Lance?
Well, all right, first of all, I want to say, we've been talking about 7 mountains and this theme for like 20 years. What's hilarious to me, and it's kind of funny, is how it's, oh yeah, 7 mountains. And what are we dealing with now? The whole country is going, you see what's going on with those college campuses with anti-Semitism? Hello, we were talking about education for 20 years. It just didn't compute. You know why? We were focused on revival. We were focused on the supernatural, and we're focusing on destiny and passion. And now the country is on fire. The education mountain. What are we going to do about that? It's an abscess that has to be dealt with. God has a remedy, and it starts with an awakening. And I guess we are reawakening to the education. But stop, it's not there. It's the corrupt government. The corrupt government. I don't have to go into this with you. You guys have been with me for a long time. You've got this thing called the uniparty. You realize that both parties have got their snouts in the trough of special interests and of donors, and that they cycle. They do years down here in Washington, then they cycle over here to this law firm, and then they cycle over here to this agency, then they cycle over here to this lobbyist group or board. We're waking up. The average, it's like less than 0.25% of humanity is actually employed in those 5 districts that surround Washington, D.C., which are the wealthiest counties in America, the wealthiest zip codes. The government mountain. You thought it was just going to go government mountain, education, name anything, family. You're watching it. Is this boy a girl? Is this girl a boy? How many moms does he have? How many dads does he have? What's the curriculum? Why? Because the family mountain has been taken. And we predicted this for 20 years. I don't have to mention fake news. Thank God for Donald Trump. If nothing else, he made fake news a label that is global. I traveled to like 30 countries since this guy was president. And I promise you, in every country, they joked to me about fake news because they knew exactly what Trump was talking about. The media is a propaganda vehicle for the corporate interests of the owners. But then again, the business. Did I say corporations? Did I mention corporations? Bud Light. That's all I got to say. When did woke and when did cultural trends coming from leftist, Marxist, psychopaths that are academics teaching children become mainstream in corporate America? Well, since the graduates went into corporate America and brought the HR departments in alignment with the new culture. Business. Do I have to mention viruses, Wuhan, whatever comes out with the next iteration of the COVID problem? What am I talking about? Pharmaceuticals. I'm talking about science and technology. It's a whole industry vertical. It's a whole mountain in itself. We've actually had to realize that mountain. Barbie made $1 billion. I was happy for the Sound of Freedom. But like one Hollywood insider told me, Sound of Freedom broke 120 million. Barbie did $1 billion. We're still playing catch up on the arts and entertainment mountain. And I'm not trying to distress you. I'm saying I've done a forensic. This is what I do in my free time in an airplane. I sit down and I list each mountain and how it is strategically being used in order to propagate a worldview that is the antithesis and antagonistic to the kingdom of God. And in each one of these mountains, it's possible for believers to carve out territory where the gates of hell are located and push back. It can happen but it's not going to happen without intentionality. And that's what this curriculum is about. This is how to master the assignment that God gave you. And I mean master it so that you move to the top, the epicenter of influence in the field that God calls you to. It's called 7M Mastery. It's the 7 mission fields that God's calling us into that will save a nation. 90% of you aren't going to be making your living in the church arena, in the religious mountain. I have a lot of Christians I talk to, obviously. But where is your husband employed? Where's the wife employed? Where are your kids employed? Out there somewhere in that secular enterprise. Thank God there are now emerging within this 7M universe, 7 Mountain universe. There are rising up Davids taking on the Goliaths. There's new marketing programs, new marketing systems, competing systems. So that's where you get the Rumble that's taking on the YouTube, or the Getter that is suddenly on the scene. You got, thank God, Elon Musk, sign of life. Say what you will about Elon Musk. I love the guy. You know why? Because Twitter got taken over by somebody who is making it an X. All of this is evidence that there's a shift happening, and that shift is coming to you. And so let's go take a look at the technology for the next decade that is going to cause us to take back territory. Are you with me? Mercedes, what do you think?
I think it's great. If you're with Lance in the comments, put, I'm with you, Lance. And hey, everybody, don't forget to like, share, and tag somebody who needs this teaching.
I'm going to be giving you guys the very secrets of mastery, because I do get a chance to work with people that are experts, that are actually at the top of their game. They're taking territory. They're starting new startups. They're IPOs. They're actually working in that space, and they're winning. And while Sound of Freedom didn't do the same numbers as Barbie, to be able to have a new method of paying it forward that produces $130 million of revenue in a global market, I'm happy. And by the way, all the investors in these projects are prospering too. You know why? Because God is breathing on reformation. And reformation means something is being raised up that is competing with a system that God is shaking. And God's doing it in every area. I got my notes here because there's so much to cover. For instance, let me talk to you about this. You guys, if you haven't seen it before, here's the 7 spheres, and the 7 spheres, they shape all of culture. Now, as I've seen, I remember I met with Communist Party members, oddly enough, who are Christians. Do you know we got Christians everywhere? We got them in Muslim worlds. We got them in communist worlds. Christians are everywhere. And they said to me, they said, you know, in China, what we have is, we have just one mountain. It's the mountain of government, because one mountain rules everything, they told me. And he kind of started growling at me like that, because he was challenging my model. I said, but that isn't the way that God designed it, because God doesn't want a totalitarian system where somebody's good. This is where the United States is going. This is where we're heading, into this totalitarian control of everything, where they control your speech, or they deplatform you, or dare I say, from the business and banking mountain, we're going to have this, digital currency where you can't buy or sell unless you're getting happy scores from the government for your behavior and stuff. Can't fly because you're on a list of people with a question mark next to your views on subjects. You see where this is going? Americans will never put up with it. Free people will rebel. And it's a God-given, that's what started America. 1776 was free people rebelling against the tyranny. Can happen. What is God saying? He's saying now's the time for you to be taking back territory. Or I'm going to put it to you another way. Many people look at this as a sphere. Matter of fact, I believe we're in the classic moment where God is raising up mountains to compete with mountains. I'm calling it sphere wars. We're in the place where the spheres are colliding. The political arena is one area where you see the spheres overlapping. The media overlaps, the people overlap, the entertainment overlaps, the big funding money brokers overlap, and they overlap their spheres like a chain like that in order to put somebody on the top of that government mountain, because they can control the spigot, so the elites stay in the game of money while the average American is getting broker and poorer and having to pay the tax for the bad policies of the elites. And you know what? When you have distrust in government, you have a populist moment. Populism is the rejection of structures and elites. And we're heading towards that populist revolt right now because people aren't willing. The moment the economy gets shaken much further than it is, you're going to start to see more populist gatherings. And by the way, they're not going to put up with the mobilization of radicals on the college campuses threatening the stability of communities. The American psyche ain't going to go there this time. And you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the moment for mastering the sphere that God gave you. That's why 7M mastery is the subject. It couldn't be more timely. In the sphere metaphor, when David was over here and God wanted to put him in the center. Now, what's in the center? I'm going to use a different person here. Here's Saul. I'll put a crown on his head. When it came time for David to go from the periphery to the center. Now, watch this. God uses the force of favor and divine appointments. Watch what I'm talking about here. And assignments. Let me give you these 3 words right now. By the way, I'm giving you one of like 8 hours worth of content that we do on the secrets of success for those that are actually reforming and hitting back on these systems, and they're making money doing it. And they're building businesses doing it because God's actually blessing the pushback. The force of favor came upon David, and as David was out in the field, playing, it's supposed to be a musical instrument, as he's worshiping God, God came upon David, Samuel came to David, and the spirit of, and he received a prophecy or a prophetic charge with an assignment. And the assignment was that he was going to become the ruler in Israel. But how is God going to get David from the periphery to the center? This is if you're looking at this as a sphere. Well, if you take that picture right there and think of it as Mercedes and I were talking about this earlier, she said, it's like a cone, isn't it? Yeah, because a mountain is a cone. What you've got is, you've got the ruler up here, you've got you and me down here at the bottom of the mountain. Well, I don't know anything about politics. I don't know anything about business. It doesn't matter. God delights to take the weak things of the world to confound the strong, the foolish to confound the intellectual. Why? Because he gets more glory out of it. You're in the periphery and God says, is there a problem you're called to solve? I'm sending you to solve it. How's he going to get you from there to there? He's going to give you a divine assignment. You're going to get it in dreams, prophecy, and indication from God that he wants you to do something. Then the favor of God begins to come upon you. What does the favor do? It creates divine appointments. See the system? Mastery is in the system. And what we train in 7M Mastery is how these things work together to put you at the top, because now's the time for the church to show up. We can't be talking another 20 years and go, I talked about the 7 mountains. We actually have to know how to, like Caleb, give me my mountain. So here you go. Though you might be weak down here at the bottom, what God does is he puts the force of favor. What happened was Saul had a problem. Woo! And you become the solution to someone else's problem. That's how all promotion happens, because you've got a solution. If you want a product that is going to sell, I know a whole lot of people have written books. I get tons of books sent to me all the time because I think during COVID, everybody became an author. And so, but your book will never become meaningful unless it solves a problem for the person who's reading it. And your story is not a solution to their problem unless you position your story as a solution to their problem. What I'm saying is, you get paid in life for the complexity of the problem that you solve. So you are a problem solver, a supernatural problem solver. And I'm not throwing that word out there, Pentecostally. I'm saying that God will give you mastery in your field. That's where 7M Mastery comes from. You're going to have a high level of skill or competence in a certain thing. I don't know what that thing is, but I could help you define it. It's called a gift cluster. It's an intersection of a couple of core skills that you've got that, if you apply them effectively in the arena that God called you to, they start to produce for you results, and those results cause you to ascend up the hill to proximity to the top. David had a gift. What was it? He sang. His harp became the vehicle for deliverance. And so when David was brought before Saul, he wasn't brought as a potential new ruler. Saul would have killed him. He was brought in as a solution to the problem. The problem was depression. David played a harp. And so because he had skill, catch that word again, in that area, well, how is God going to use this? It doesn't matter for you to figure. You don't have to figure out how God's going to use it. Your job is to develop mastery, 7M mastery in something you do. And then you yield that to God, and God positions it in front of kings. A man's gifts makes room for him. So what happens is the favor of God comes upon David. David becomes irresistibly attracted to Saul. God sets up a divine appointment, if you remember your Bible. Saul's got depression. A king's servant says, I know there's somebody in your kingdom that can help you. He goes and gets David. David comes in. Saul is delivered. The moment that David comes in to Saul's presence, the devil, put a pitchfork here, the devil has to leave. When God opens up the door for you, you carry spiritual authority with you into that domain. Do you want to know one of the problems? You don't know you've got spiritual authority over the devil in the domain God's sending you into, so you never bother to pray and take authority over things before you go in. Most Christians live in this weird world where it's like, here's the secular world over here, and here's the spirit land over here. I'm off in spirit land on Sunday and a charismatic means, but when it comes to work on Monday, I don't realize the gifts of the Spirit and the anointing are just as much or even more so for Monday than for Sunday. David goes in and by the Spirit of God, the Spirit, by the anointing on a harp, on the natural has a super on it. The supernatural shows up on the natural thing he does. The devil is driven away from Saul. Saul's clear-headed. Now, guess what David is experiencing? He's experiencing what we call sphere preeminence. Sphere preeminence. It's mastery in the sphere. He's moving from the sphere of music therapist to government very quickly. Giant comes along named Goliath. Oh, it's a giant problem someone else has. Catch the connection? The giant problem can only be met by one person, a person who is in convergence with the force of favor, following the divine appointment because they're in divine assignments that have been prophetically revealed and released to them, and their skill and mastery now is going to be matched by another skill. It's called slingshot 101. Sitting out there, nobody knew this kid had this talent. It's like sitting in the backyard, hitting, why? Because he had a few sheep and he was constantly doing something to kill time. He either sang or played with a slingshot. Evidently, his talent was sufficient so that the Spirit of God could come upon it. The super came on the natural. And as a result, the slingshot solved the giant problem. That was Goliath. David is now in proximity to the throne, and now he is a potential ruler in that area. Folks, you know what I've given you? One of 7 modules. I'm going as fast as I can because I got limited time. I got more content than, this is the reason why I think people are coming to me right now I didn't even talk about the ecclesia. How when you've got 2 or 3 people praying together, it force multiplies the power of your ascendancy into a place of preeminence. And God's plan for you is that you should be the head, not the tail. Quit murmuring about the problems that are out there and begin to realize your problem is an invitation to join God in becoming the solution that goes to the top of that situation. God is about to promote his people in extraordinary ways. Now, it gets confusing if you don't have a Sherpa guide. You want to go up the mountain, you want to go up to any mountain, you want to go up Everest. It's amazing to me, there's people up there, there's millionaires training their whole life to go up mountain. Then there's some guy who is native to that environment in that region, whose lungs are acclimated, who basically takes them up, takes them down, takes them. The Sherpa guides know how to do this thing every day. It's the rich guy that wants to go have the experience that might die on the way up. Let me be the Sherpa, because the one thing I can tell you is I work with tons of people in diverse fields, and I see how this system works, how the excellent spirit or the yatir of God promotes you, how convergence happens, how you come into a moment of integration where your whole history is attached to an assignment God gives you right now, and it makes full use of everything you've ever done. And frankly, a lot of the people that you've already met come into clarity in terms of how they're going to help you. All I can tell you is 7M Mastery is the course I did in the studio. I brought like 20 or 30 emerging proteges, people that I had respect in that are younger that I've been teaching. I said, come on in, I'm going to do a live training, and that training is coming available to you. I want you to go to 7M Mastery. No, actually go to lancewallnau.com/mastery. lancewallnau.com/mastery, because God is about to visit you with a wake up that it's time for you to do the thing he's been putting in your heart to do. I'll tell you something. You may start off like I did in the church mountain. Or actually, I started off in the business mountain. I got saved and left it and became a zealot in the church mountain. Then something strange happened. From the church mountain, I began getting involved with government and media. Because God can literally take you from one place to another in the journey of your calling. You're not limited to just one particular place. But you've got to be in that place long enough to acquire mastery in that sphere. Because if you have mastery in that domain, then God can move you to the next one and move you to the next one. And everything you've learned in the previous ones compounds your ability to move quickly from the periphery to the top in the next field. Because that skill development with your slingshot, that skill development with the harp, actually is perfectly designed to move you into a key position in the next assignment. All right, Mercedes, I'm going to go back to the desk. What do you think?
Wow, Lance, I tell you, this 7M teaching, this is the teaching that is for such a time as this. I mean, who wouldn't want to understand and master the concept of 7 mountains? The other thing I think that's so important to highlight in here is it's not just that teaching. You also really pull some highlights from the level 10 living, the concepts like the wheel of life. We look at that. We look at, I think briefly you touch on timelines, but this is really, honestly, this whole course that you're talking about, the 7M Mastery course, we took a live studio audience here. Oh, you're going back to the board now. You took a live studio audience here, and we had like 30, 40, Fortune 500 company runners. I mean, just amazing. Like social media influencers, a couple million people online that are following them. And you really went through and said, I really want to raise up the next generation that's going to run with this 7 mountain message and this level 10 message. And so anyways, I see you feverishly erasing the board over there.
Well, because I sat back down and then you started saying, well, the level 10. Yeah, the level 10 teaching has to do with the process of personal conversion. So the 7 mountains, this stuff's very powerful. Integrating favor. Angels. What do angels do? Well, angels set you up for the divine appointments. There's so many pieces to this beautiful puzzle. But the convergence piece, or the level 10 piece, if you've never heard me teach it before, you got to get it now. What I've found is when people fail, I don't care whether it's in romance or making money or winning an athletic event, it frequently comes out to 2 things. It's either the motivation wasn't 100% focused. There wasn't the real will to. If a relationship doesn't work, somebody wasn't playing at 100%, because almost any relationship is salvageable if both are 100% committed to making it work. But if you're only 50% committed, you got a problem. Motivation is a hard issue. But then there's also this other part. You may have all the motivation in the world to have 1 million followers and change the world, but you don't have the skill to write. Or you don't have the strategy. There's only 2 things that could possibly be off with anyone I've ever worked with. It's either a bad strategy with a person that was really sincere, or it was a great strategy, but it really wasn't, the passion wasn't in making it work. So I call this level 10. You need a level 10 strategy. And then you need a level 10 alignment of passion. This thing has to have the right state. You have to show up in the right disposition for the thing to work. One time I had a very difficult meeting I had to do as a pastor. And I had a good coach, Bobby Hill. And he told me, you're going to have to put on the disposition of Jesus for that meeting. It was such wisdom. Put on because I didn't have it. I was exasperated. Lance was in the flesh, exasperated. But Jesus had maturity and compassion. I put on the disposition of Jesus because you can put on Christ. And the grace of God showed up in that meeting. But if you've got a level 10 commitment with a level 5 strategy, here's what happens. Boom. Your ultimate success, this is your face in the future. The crowning achievement is what we call a level 10-10. This is where you want to be. But if you are only showing up with half the tools, for instance, you realize the number one thing that gets in the way of people fulfilling destiny, and I'm talking about studies of convergence by Bobby Clinton for like 30 years. It isn't that there aren't devastating setbacks, contradictions galore that happen to people. It's that the people that made it into convergence, that sustained it, didn't quit. They endured the contradiction, which is what the Bible says Jesus did in Hebrews, enduring the contradiction. The problem is when the contradiction comes, some people step back and don't know what to do. You have to press through the contradiction. Because if you don't, you got a level 5 strategy, level 9 commitment, you're leaving that much on the table. This is so hard to erase, I'm just going to have to do it this way. If you've got a level 8 strategy, but you've got a level 7 passion, watch this. That's pretty good, right? Here's my problem. You see that area there? That's the amount of money that you're not making. That's the amount of love you're not generating or receiving. And worse yet, if you've got a level 10 devil, you can't dispossess a level 10 devil with a level 7 strategy. You need to be thinking this thing through. My goal for you is that you will not lack the information you need to be a great success in this assignment. You want to go to lancewallnau.com/mastery. Take advantage of the material that has been prepared for you so economically compared to a college curriculum course, $50,000 I paid for one of my kids at Pepperdine for a year. I put it on the lowest possible shelf so anyone can get a hold of it. You want to go to level 10, you want to go to lancewallnau.com/mastery, especially during this weekend because we're making it even more accessible. I'm taking off like $200 or $300 off the price so you can get it right now. Look forward to seeing you later. God bless you.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.